Hello again, everybody. It's your boy Brennan, back at it again for a Sunday night PSA. Wanted to talk to you guys a little bit. First off, for all my high school kids, I just want you guys to know that tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we're trying this Zoom meeting thing out. So I have that all scheduled. I will send the link out to you and your parents through Flocknote. We'll be starting right up at 8 o'clock. Feel free to join in, hang out. We're going to talk a little bit about faith. Check in, see where we're all sitting in this crazy time, and just spend a little more time coming together as a community in a virtual sense, since we can't do it face to face right now. Over a week ago, country music legend Kenny Rogers died. Basically, any other time that I can think of in my lifetime, if this had occurred, it would have been front page news. Most news shows might have led with it. It would have been a really, really big deal. But due to the COVID-19 crisis, it barely got mentioned, really, and I moved it to the back of my mind really, really quickly. And I think we're also kind of doing the same thing with our faith right now. We're sitting in the most important, the most impactful, the highest holy season of our liturgical calendar, which that being Lent. And there's so much stuff going on around us that it's really difficult to pay attention or spend time thinking and meditating on a lot of the Bible passages that are being read, that would be being read each week at Mass. And there's a bunch of really good, really hard-hitting ones. And today I want to talk about one of them, which is the story of Jesus healing the blind man. But first we need just a little bit more context. During Jesus' time, the faith leaders that people looked to were the Pharisees, which was basically just a large group of Jewish priests, who, of course, their holy book was the Torah, which is basically, you can think about it as the First Testament of our Bible. And throughout the Old Testament, God's going around, he's burning cities to the ground, he's flooding the entire world, he's doing all these crazy things because of how sinful humans are. So the Pharisees are already operating from that point of view, that anything bad that happens to anybody is the result of some sin that they committed, and therefore it is completely deserved and they should be shunned as a result. When Jesus sees the blind man, he doesn't see him as someone that's born into sin and is not worthy of love or care. He simply sees him for what he is, which is a human being who is worthy of dignity and love and respect. And so what he does, he spits on the ground. He mixes his spit around and makes a little bit of mud, rubs it on the blind man's eyes, and says, "Go wash yourself in the pool of Bethesda." And Bethesda is basically translated to mean house of grace. So he's saying, go wash yourself in the house of grace, and you will have sight. And sure enough, the blind man goes and does this, and suddenly he's not blind anymore. And he seemed pretty pumped about this, but the Pharisees were not as excited. So when Jesus heals the blind man, first off what he's doing is he's really undermining the Pharisees' teaching, first off, on sin. He's saying that this idea that sin manifests itself in families and leads to awful things, and that stain can stay forever, and you're going to have children that are blind, and God's going to punish you if you sin. First off, he undermines that, and undermines the whole entire idea of the Old Testament God, of being super vengeful and hateful. Jesus is saying, there is a new covenant. I'm the Son of God, and your God is love. Your God is compassion. This is what we're supposed to be serving. So he undermines the Pharisees in teaching, but more importantly to the Pharisees, he undermines their power as being the voice for the Jewish people on how to live their life. It gives them, if Jesus were to ascend into power as he does, then the Pharisees are no longer, the big guys in town. The Pharisees hear about this. They seek out the blind man, and they berate him and they insult him when he says that he's been saved by a Messiah. They say, "You're insane. You're crazy. How dare you speak to us this way and act like you know the teachings better?" And they do the exact same thing with the man's parents. And the man's parents are even so scared of being thrown out of the temple that they basically say, "Oh, he's grown. We don't have anything to do with him. You'll have to ask him," because they're so worried about how vengeful the Pharisees could be. If you or your family were to step out of line with the exact teaching, there was a good chance you were going to get thrown out of the temple and you wouldn't have an opportunity to worship any longer. So they get really mad at the no longer blind man, the formerly blind man, and they throw him out of the temple. And Jesus hears about this, and he comes to the blind man and says, like, do you believe in the Son of Man? And he says, I do. If I have seen him, let me know. And Jesus says, well, basically, guess what? You're talking to him. And the man immediately drops down to his knees and worships him and is a disciple to him from that point out. He's a worshiper of Jesus. He's no longer Jewish. He's basically been converted. And some Pharisees are there around him and basically are like, Jesus, this makes no sense. You're way off your rocker. And then Jesus says, basically, the blind will see, and those who see will become blind through Jesus' love. And this kind of comes back to the idea of the last will be first, the first shall be last. He's basically saying we need to change and shift our paradigm and how we think and care for other people. And the Pharisees are super thrown off by this, and they kind of talk amongst themselves and say, are we blind too? And Jesus replies pretty simply and says, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. So I think Jesus is talking a lot about this idea of seeing things. He's talking about seeing the poor and the most vulnerable in our world. So it's very easy to claim that we see the massive inequalities and the massive hardships that people go through. It's easy to claim that we see that, but unless we are making actual actionable changes to our lives and changes to care for these people and support these people and love these people and see them for who they are in Jesus' eye, which is a human being that is worthy of dignity and love and respect. Unless we are actually making the effort to do that, then we might as well still be blind, and our guilt remains. That being said, as we go through these next couple weeks, months, whatever it may look like, I want to encourage all of us to see more, to be aware of the people that are having a tough time. And if we're not having as tough of a time, to make steps, to reach out to those people, to help them out, simply to spread more love in the world. Because that's the most beautiful part of the New Testament, to me, is that God is no longer about not stepping out of line and doing exactly what is said in the book. And if you don't, then it'll burn your city to the ground. Jesus is completely different. He says that through me, God is simply love, plain and simple. And that our mission as Christians is to treat others the way Jesus would have treated them, which is with the utmost care and love and respect. And I think that's greatly needed in this world today. It was before this epidemic came about, and it will be afterwards. So I really want to encourage you guys to see that, to go out, well, not to go out, you know what I mean, to reach out to people, to check in on people, to just spread more love as we go through this insane time in human history. That being said, I hope to see you guys on Sunday night for the Zoom meeting. I think it's going to be really great. I think we're going to have a good time. Thanks for watching. And I want to leave you guys with a quote that isn't from the Bible. It's from a song called Jericho by an artist called Rustin Kelly. And there's basically just a couple lyrics that I really love that I want to send you guys off with today. So he says, you can walk to Bethesda, but there's no house on Mercy Street. You might get lost in the company of angels, ignoring the stones tied around your feet. You got to try for something. Bend your knee and fight for something. Learn how to die for something, so you ain't living life for nothing. Rivers weren't made for drowning. Souls were never made to fail. I raised Jericho around me, but these walls were built to fail. So I invite you guys to go on this journey with me of breaking these walls down that we've built up around us, to keep God out, to keep other people out. It doesn't matter what it is. I just invite you guys to be more vulnerable this week, to be more radically loving this week, to give more of yourself this week. And we're just going to continue to make this world better and more like God's kingdom, little by little. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you on Sunday, but if not, have a great week and God bless you.